Little black girls don't get to engage in fantasy play that concludes with Prince Charming and happily ever after. We can't even begin to imagine what it would be like to be locked in a tower, waiting for the night to come and rescue us. We've been rescuing our damn selves for generations. So when a man says that he's coming back, we've learned not to wait on him. We've learned to get it how we live. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Resurrection, Part 12. When we left off, the war between the notorious five families and the International Trafficking Organization was at critical mass. While there was a lull in the attacks being perpetrated by the International Trafficking Organization against the five families, in business and personal, the five families' ability to end the threat and crush the International Trafficking Organization was almost squarely in the hands of Emmanuel Manny Lopez, Quincy Anders St. James IV, and Catherine Montclair St. James. At the same time, though, the next generation of five family leadership were all facing their own tests. Saint had been successfully extradited from Paris back to America by the federal government, and he was being held in a federal prison in Arkansas. And 2 days in the federal prison didn't appear to have had any impact on him whatsoever. Not only had he made zero effort to resist when COs were rougher than they actually needed to be, but he hadn't complained, appeared affected, or communicated with a single soul, no one in medical or administration. He hadn't requested to communicate with his legal team, made any phone calls, or attempted to write any letters. And he had everybody stumped, the COs and the inmates, especially his cellmate, a Haitian out of New York by the name of Roland. Roland had been transferred to the Arkansas prison just hours after Saint. He'd been held at a higher level security facility where the amenities available to him were limited. His ability to remain safe was questionable. Initially, Saint and Roland moved around one another pretty silently. They gave one another a wide berth, and with very little communication, were quickly able to establish the rules of engagement for being cellmates. When the 24-hour waiting period was up, Roland had a visitor. And when he returned from that visit, he had an interesting look on his face. Instead of asking him any questions, Saint just raised an eyebrow. And in response, Roland pointed to his ear, indicating that their cell was bugged. Then he did a hand sign that Saint recognized. He was communicating to Saint that he was an ally of the five families. When Saint deadpanned, Roland just nodded his head. He knew what it was. There was absolutely nothing he could do or say to earn Saint's trust. He was an inmate, and more importantly, he was Haitian. And if Saint was as connected as his visitor said he was, then Saint couldn't afford to let his guard down, trust him or anybody else, and it wasn't worth even trying. When Roland was arrested, he had a good lawyer. He darn near begged to be transferred from the prison where he was being held because rumors were abounding that he flipped, turned snake on his crew, and was informing. Those rumors were pure fiction, but he did not have the ability to prove them false. He knew exactly what they were. Too bad his team didn't. They were an attempt to flip him, or one or more of his codees. Every one of them was facing life in prison without parole. Roland hated that they didn't know better. That he'd take life in prison for 500, Alex, before he'd go down in history as a snitch. Imagine his surprise when a crack lawyer who had a reputation from getting the guilty off showed up in the legal room requesting to see him. He didn't get a whole lot of information. All he was told was that he was being transferred, and that man was his new lawyer. He dropped a bag on the previous one, so he definitely didn't have the funds for a lawyer of this caliber. And before he could tell the man that he didn't know how he was going to pay him, the man had got up and walked out the room. The CO immediately flipped his cell, and before he knew what was happening, he was on a plane to Arkansas. So not knowing what the hell was going on, he was immediately suspicious of his new cellie. He'd come from 23-1 in a cell by himself, and now he had a lawyer he couldn't afford. He'd been transferred, which he'd been asking for 9 months, but he hadn't been transferred just anywhere. He was damn near in a country club. His commissary was full, and he had every single thing that an inmate was allowed in federal lockup. And he knew his family, his old crew, nobody he could think of could possibly be responsible for that. So he figured the feds had upped the ante. They were trying to get him to inform and thought they could bribe him into doing it. But he wasn't going. When he was called out of his cell for a visitor, he'd assumed that it was the feds with another offer that they thought he couldn't refuse. But no matter what they did, he was not flipping. But to his dismay, he wasn't taken to the Fed interview room. He was taken to the legal room. And the same crack lawyer who had informed him of his transfer was waiting there. This man flew to Arkansas to have a sit down with him? Yeah, someone right. When the lawyer finished explaining the situation, his mind, body, and spirit relaxed. He couldn't have prayed for a better hookup. And he was going to do whatever the five families needed him to do, because they discovered a plot against his life. And not only relocated him, but they relocated his entire family. They'd gotten him a new lawyer and were in the process of negotiating a deal that would have him out in 10 without snitching. And because of their efforts, he'd actually be able to see his wife and kids in person instead of on a screen. And all he needed to do in exchange was the same thing that had been done for him. They had a man on the inside in his previous prison who could have whatever he wanted in exchange for information. He'd receive information, disseminate that information, and be on the lookout for others that the five families could use. Individuals who were getting a bad break, who'd shown themselves to be loyal, stayed out of the way, out of trouble, and didn't fold easily. Then, when the five families had someone who was locked up and had to sit because they couldn't get bail or because they'd been convicted, they'd enlist the services of the person identified by the inside man, lighten their burden, make their time easier, provide them with better legal representation, whatever they needed, endearing that person to the five families and getting their newly institutionalized individual the protection and/or information that they needed. So Roland was ready and willing to earn his keep. He just hoped that his cellmate was worth the five families' investment. He wouldn't make it too hard for him to do his new job. He knew absolutely nothing about the young bull, but he knew that this arrangement could go one of two ways. Montclair would either rise to the occasion or sink like a stone. And if the latter happened, Roland was going to have to make sure that he didn't take him down with him. Meanwhile, in Denver, Big Wood had left True in the bathroom and headed to the kitchen, where he found Indira preparing another huge breakfast. And when he asked if there was anything he could do to help her, she told him to have a seat. As she cooked, she said, "Wood, you and I haven't had a lot of time to really get to know one another. And I'm sure you already know that I don't know a whole lot about what it is that you and my sister do. And to be frank, I'm perfectly okay with that. My sister and I are close because I don't ask her to be anybody other than who she is. I have always encouraged her to follow her own dreams, make her own way, and be her own woman. I don't know why you need the world to believe that you're dead. I know that my husband, my children, and I were almost inadvertently caught up in all of this. And as quickly as the issue arose, it was handled. And I don't know how or by whom. What I do know is this situation must be bad. If my sister and I had to be out of contact for all these months, so I ain't got no issue with you. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you just how relieved and shocked I was to discover that you were alive and you were the one who was summoning me here. The average person would have expected my sister to be overjoyed when she learned that the man that she loves is still alive. But I wasn't at all surprised by her reaction. And I hope you weren't either. Big Wood said, "Nah." And Indira chuckled. She said, "I'm glad to hear it. So what I want to know is, are you built for this? In your current condition, do you have what it takes to win my sister's heart back? Because I don't know if you realized it, but you've lost it." When Big Wood didn't respond, Indira said, "I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, am I?" And Big Wood said, "Nope." Indira said, "Good. As far as I'm concerned, you deserve every bit of heartache she gives you." Hearing that, Big Wood's eyes got big. Indira said, "Don't give me that look. If you know my sister, then you know my sister. She's due to give birth any minute now, and she's gained a whopping 10 pounds. Wet with rocks in her pocket, she's a good $120. And 2 of those pounds she's gained in the last 3 or 4 days. My point is twofold. She's been little all her life, so she's always been a scrapper. And she's been through pure D hell over the last few months. And without knowing all that has transpired, I can see that. It's written all over her. But I'm sure you know all about it. And if you add that with all my sister's been through throughout the course of her life, then you've got to know that it's going to take more than a few days, a few meals, a few foot rubs, a few I love yous, and a few orgasms for her to get over what she sees as treachery on your part. She's not going to just let it go. She doesn't know how to just thank God for favor and count the pain as a part of the process. And no matter what she may have done, she is not going to compare sins with you. Whatever she did because she believed you were dead. And if you were, you wouldn't be here to question her about it. I get why it would matter to you. I understand that you are a man. And I also understand that black men carry weights that women will never understand. Well, women, we carry weights that men will never understand. Little black girls don't get to engage in fantasy play that concludes with Prince Charming and happily ever after. My daughters are growing up in a two-parent household, not much different from the one that True and I grew up in. The main difference is they don't see their father and I argue. We don't yell, we don't use corporal punishment. And we thought we were doing something. Imagine my surprise when I walked in on my children playing with their dolls. One was fussing about her house being dirty, and the other was fussing about her man not coming home. When Big Wood chuckled, and Zira said, "It's not funny. I don't know where they got that from." I was shocked and appalled. I talked it over with one of my friends. She's a child psychologist. Since then, I've done a whole lot of research. And one of the things that I learned is that trauma is in a black girl's DNA. We are here today because our ancestors survived atrocities that we couldn't begin to imagine. And while those traumas aren't a part of our lived experience, they've been passed down from generation to generation. And even with not having had those experiences ourselves, they've still managed to be ingrained in the way we parent, the way we relate to one another. Those traumas rear their ugly heads in our covenant relationships, parent-child, husband-wife, in the way that we see ourselves juxtaposed to the world around us. And they're in full display when our children engage in fantasy play. Our children aren't acting out behavior that they've seen played out in their own home. They're not acting out things that they've seen online or on television. They're acting out the lived experiences of generations of black women. Black women don't have the luxury of sitting around waiting for Prince Charming. We can't even begin to imagine what it would be like to be locked in a tower, waiting for the night to come and rescue us. We've been rescuing our damn selves for generations. So when a man says that he's coming back, we've learned not to wait on him. We've learned to get it how we live. And that can't be more true than for true. Life has taught my sister that she can't depend or rely on anybody but herself. That she can't lean in on love because it just might be taken away. No, scratch that. It will absolutely be taken away. She spent her whole life in a state of cognitive dissonance, fighting a system of inequality, and then being dragged along through all the paces. So while she was at school and in the neighborhood, whooping behinds and taking names, she was in our house and in our family's restaurant, being a good little girl, following instructions, and trying to carry our parents' dream. And when she walked away from that life, she didn't just upset the apple cart. She forfeited everyone's love except for mine and our daddy's. And the only other love that hasn't abandoned her was the love that she found with her two best friends, Stephanie and Rennie. And I'm sure since then, she's created close relationships with other people, just like she created one with you. But when you lose trust with anybody, it's real hard to get it back. It's even harder with a person her size. I'm not just talking about her physical stature. My sister has learned that she can be the predator or she can be the prey. And when the choice is fight, flight, or freeze, she's always going to choose the fight. Anyone she allows in her life is going to have to choose whether they're going to fight alongside her or whether they're going to be a person she has to fight against. And if they leave her to her own devices, she will absolutely draw first blood. Big Wood said, not the enemy. And Zira said, and? Hell, not being an enemy does not make you a friend. Anything and anybody who stands in the way of what that girl's decided for herself will quickly become a non-factor by any means necessary. And I'm sure that there is something that has transpired in the time that you've known her that proves that. And Big Wood immediately thought of Tasha going overboard and Amira's disappearance. Reading the memories playing behind Big Wood's eyes, and Zira said, and she'll do it even if it breaks her own heart. You didn't lose her love when you died. You lost it when you resurrected yourself. That's water under the bridge now. What are you going to do to get it back? Because she's going to drop that load and cut and run. And anything and anybody that stands in her way will be cut off at the knees. If you box her in, she's going to fight her way out. And in your present condition, I don't know if you built for that fight. Big Wood swole up and Indira said, oh, don't look at me like that. I ain't scared of you. And I'm not coming for your manhood. Believe me, I know that you are everything my sister wants and needs. But do you know that? Do you still know how to be that? In all my conversations with my sister over the last few days, she hasn't once mentioned your physical condition. My question is about your mind. I'm pretty good at seeing what people don't say. You and my sister have so much in common. Even right now, while y'all are in limbo, this whole situation has awakened and resurrected something in both of you. Childhood hurts generational traumas, your unshakable wills, and your determination to have everything this life hasn't promised you. You both have barely survived what you've been through over the last few months. You need each other to heal those wounds. Big Wood said, trying. Try harder. Indira said, no, fool, don't try harder. Try smarter. I hate to use these particular words, but I can't think of any better ones. Play her game, not yours. When Big Wood looked confused and annoyed, Indira asked, where is she? Big Wood said, tub. And Indira asked, why? And Wood pulled a face like, what kind of question is that? Indira said, she's been in there for more than 40 minutes. You don't think she want to get out? That girl is big and pregnant. She is stuck. And she's got too much pride to ask you for help. Big Wood stood up and Indira said, now, if you go in there and just start helping her out, what do you think she's going to say or do? Big Wood grabbed the tablet and used it to say, she's probably going to pretend like she wasn't done. Indira said, precisely. And then 5 minutes later, she'd call me or your mother and ask for our help. Big Wood just chuckled and shook his head. Indira said, she feels helpless and she hates it. So you offer what she needs and let her feel like it's her idea. That's not manipulation or control. That's just meeting her where she is. She knows how to get what she wants. You want to win her heart back? Show her she can trust you with what she needs. Then Indira finished plating the food that she just prepared. She loaded 2 plates. One with loaded potatoes, onions, peppers, mushrooms, turkey sausage, cheddar jack cheese, eggs Benedict, petite pecan pancakes, spicy chicken sausage links. And then she filled a bowl with steel-cut oatmeal, fresh fruit, and honey. Then she handed Big Wood the tray table, the bowl of oatmeal, and the silverware, and patiently watched while he made the adjustment. He put the tray and tablet under one arm, rolled the silverware in some napkins and tucked them in his jeans pocket, grabbed the bowl of oatmeal with one hand and his cane with the other, and then headed directly to True, who was stuck in the tub. Indira had read Big Wood right. Just like True, he was tired of needing help, and his spirit flourished when he was the helper. He didn't want to be coddled. He didn't want everybody else doing everything for him. He was fully capable of figuring it out, of making it work under his current circumstances, of taking care of himself and his woman. And he'd heard Indira loud and clear. He knew exactly what he needed to do. So when he entered the bathroom, he looked at True and said, in or out? When True said, out, I guess, as if she hadn't been toiling over how the hell she was getting out of that tub. Big Wood turned around, walked back into the bedroom, sat down all of the things that he was carrying, returned to the bathroom, grabbed her towel, shifted all of his weight to his good leg, bent over, and like she weighed nothing, picked True up out of the tub, stood her up on her feet, wrapped her in her towel, and picked her up again. True said, now unless you want us both to end up in this floor, I suggest you put me down. Big Wood chuckled and said, got you, little mama. And then slowly and carefully carried True into the bedroom. There wasn't a part of his body that didn't hurt. But if it was up to him, True wouldn't burn a single calorie. She needed to hold on to every pound and every ounce of weight she could. He sat her on the bed, and as she began to towel herself off, he said, wait. He grabbed the chair next to the bed and pulled it close to where True was sitting, took the towel from her hand, and dried her off. When he was done, he walked over to her dresser and said, which one? And True said, I want to try that new scent that Angela sent me, date night. And Big Wood immediately knew what kind of timing True was on. He carried back all of the skincare products from vibrantly used date night line, and then gently, slowly, and seductively rubbed True down in the afterbath body oil and massaged into her skin the body cream. Then he handed her the body spray and allowed her to apply it in all of the areas where she saw fit. When she was done, he pulled her close and took a deep inhale. He had no idea what Q had the chemist put in those products, but it took every ounce of self-control he could muster to stay focused. One thing was for sure, he wasn't going to be the only one aroused. Big Wood took full advantage of the fact that True was still completely nude. He kissed and rubbed her belly while saying, son, I love you. And then he relished in feeling his son squirm and move all around inside her womb. Every time he had the pleasure of that experience, it brought tears to his eyes. And because her abdomen was smack dab in the middle, between her breast and her honeypot, the minute he finished relishing the experience of feeling his son move, he quickly slid his hands and his lips into position, intent on making True move too. He had to move quickly because True had shut things down after their last discussion at the hospital. She'd let Big Wood see her fully undressed, help her in and out of the shower, in and out of her clothes. She didn't tell him no when he wanted to rub her belly. She let him massage her feet, rub her back, but she told him in no uncertain terms that he wasn't getting no cookies out of the cookie jar until he withdrew his ultimatum and gave her what she wanted. And he told her that he'd gone months without it, unlike her, and she'd be begging for it before he would. So they'd been in a little tug of war, both intent on getting the other to give in. He was absolutely going to respect her no. He was just going to make it hard for her to continue saying no. Respectfully, of course. So when she felt her yoni pulse, because he'd taken one ipple into his mouth, was strumming the other with his thumb, and had one of his very large fingers deep inside her, while stroking her button with his thumb, she said, "My oatmeal is getting cold, and so am I." He released the ipple that he had in his mouth and covered her mouth with his, while continuing to use his hands to pleasure her. And just as he felt the telltale signs of extreme wetness that indicated she was close, he pulled back and said, "My bad," handed her the nightgown that was waiting on the bed, stood up, grabbed his cane, and headed in the kitchen to get her food. As True watched him walk out, she thought to herself, "You son of a..." Just because she wasn't going to give him none, that did not mean she didn't want to get hers. Big and pregnant and all, her hormones were still raging. And if her shower head wouldn't suffice when Bosch was with her, it really wasn't going to suffice with Big Wood there. When he returned, he wasn't alone. He was carrying one plate and Indira was carrying the other, and the bottle of syrup. He sat the tray in front of her, sat his plate on it, picked up the bowl of oatmeal from the nightstand, sat it on it, removed the silverware and napkins from his pocket, and laid them on the tray. Took the second plate from Indira's hands, and when she went to hand True the syrup, Big Wood snatched it out of her hand and said, "I got it." And while Indira was still standing there, Big Wood uncapped the syrup and poured it all over True's cleavage. Indira said, "All right, that's my cue." Then she turned and walked out of the room, while Big Wood said, "Oops, guess I should clean that up."
I made mistakes when I fell on my face. Subject to public embarrassment. Victim of verbal abuse. Everything that I do, it get taken for granted. Dragging my name in the media saying that I done abandoned my family.